Hello class, welcome to the second video lecture discussing Kamala Das's poem My Grandmother's House.
So her heart was itself like a dark winter, where fresh air did not blow. There was no love in her marriage, and all she could conjure up, the pleasant memories that she could conjure up, was only from her childhood that was spent in Malapat House. So she would like to listen to and feel the atmosphere of the house, even if it is desolate, even if it is without the presence of her loving grandmother. So the two things that you have to notice is the visual imagery, that is the blind eyes of the windows and the frozen air, and these imageries is utilized by Das to convey the idea of death and desperation. And there is also a simile at the end of the paragraph to communicate how she is unable to pay a visit to her grandmother's house despite really wishing to do the same, and hence she is using the simile of a brooding dog to show her own inability to visit the house. So this longing to revisit her house is now the frustration. She is just adding to the frustration and the hopelessness that she has because of her marriage and her lovelessness and her isolation in the city. However, there is an inherent understanding in these lines that she would rather go and visit her grandmother's house, because the grandmother's house will have less terrifying impact on her rather than her current city life. So she would like to go and revisit her grandmother's house, even look through the blind windows, experience the lifeless, frozen air, maybe gather some darkness, but also some memories of the grandmother's house, to bring them to the present city of residence. The very memory of her grandmother's house is the only thing that she hopes will have a soothing impact on her loveless and hopeless married life. As she is pensively thinking about her grandmother's house, she remembers a part of self who was actually loved, who had a sense of self. And at this point, as the poem is concluding, the author makes a proclamation to her husband or the lover that you might never know that I was once a woman who was very much loved, or once a woman who kept her head high and was proud and was loved. So you can read these lines. You cannot believe, darling, can you, that I lived in such a house and was proud and loved. I who have lost my way and sat now at strangers' doors to receive love, at least in small change. So here, in these last 5 lines, speaker is proclaiming that in some schools it is problematic for anyone, especially her husband, to have faith in the fact that she once lived in such a house filled with love and affection and was very much loved by all, and she lived her life with a sense of self. It is a very difficult task for people to actually believe, especially her husband, to believe that once upon a time she was a woman who was very much loved, and she was a person who received a lot of attention and affection. But at this present time, as she is writing these lines, she is trapped in a loveless and hopeless married life, and her sense of pride is crippled completely because of that. And it is very much in contrast with the love which she used to have in the grandmother's house. Now she has become a beggar for love. She is knocking helplessly at strangers' doors to even get some love, even in small measures. This is a suggestion to the extramarital relationships she may have in order to gain some love, in order to recoup the loss of pride that happened because of a loveless marriage. So she has almost lost her way, searching for genuine and selfless love. And as she is writing down these lines, the only place where she believes she got genuine and selfless love was the grandmother's house. As the poem is ending, Kamala Das is exposing the futility of loveless and hopeless marriage relationships. In the last few lines, she is a frustrated woman. She is a married woman who is trying to rely on extramarital relationships to seek love and emotional satisfaction. So there is agony, there is pain in having to go through other people, go to extramarital relationships to receive love, and the humiliation of the societal shaming. And all she is left with is the understanding that the true love, that unconditional love that made her a proud woman, was received only when her grandmother was alive. And now it is totally inaccessible to her. So as we see in this last lines, you can see, I lived in such a house and I was proud and loud. I who have lost my way and beg now at stranger's door to receive love, at least in small change. The use of the pronoun I is almost melancholic. She is sad, she has lost her way. She is sad that once she was proud and loved, that nobody would even believe that she was once loved and proud. So this melancholic and emphatic use of I is actually echoing her inner thoughts, inner conversations. How she was very much rich with love when her grandmother was alive. And now after her demise, she is completely bankrupt of love. And she is literally in a very pathetic stage now, that despite being married, because of the loveless marriage she is in, she is begging at other people's doors for some love, for some emotional satisfaction. Her current condition has changed so much that she is a completely changed woman. A very proud and very loved past is completely erased from her present identity. Now she is not expecting the kind of love that she received from her grandmother, from the society of marriage. So at the end, there is a resignation, a desire to revisit the desolate house where the grandmother lived, to conjure up as many pleasant memories, to live through her present agonies. So here the symbol of grandmother's house, which is also the title, it is actually used to portray a nostalgic picture of the speaker's childhood, which was filled with love. And it is in contrast with her present, because she is now in a marriage which is completely devoid of love. And that the use of the images of windows and doors, it is the representation or the symbolization of, such images, these images of windows and doors symbolize the poet's connection to her inner self and the outer self. And her use of suggestive visual imagery, for example, blind eyes of the windows, frozen air in the grandmother's house, these are all strong images that are used to convey the idea of death and desperation. In the poem, Kamala Das's past and present are contrasted. A past where she was younger, more innocent, much loved, very proud. All of this that happened in her grandmother's house. Her present is married, loveless, hopeless, straining to extramarital relationships, begging people for love, but even then not satisfied. So this difference between past and present are contrasted. And the poet is realizing that the only part of her life that is inspiring is the past, and she wants to retain all the memories from the past so that she can manage through the present time, which is not even worth living. And window, the image of window that was utilized, the image of window utilized in the poem is actually the link between the past and the present. It is a desire of the poet to nostalgically peek into her past and resurrect her dreams and desire, rejuvenate her memory of being a very independent and loved self that is shown through the image of the window. The poem is very simple. This poem falls under the category or genre of confessional poetry. So, a confessional poem usually contains subjects that are not written publicly, like death or trauma or the loss, sense of loss. And a confessional poem is described as poetry of the personal or the I, and it always has a theme that is not usually discussed publicly, especially where the author is sharing a very individual experience, and the personal trauma or taboo matters like sexuality, mental illness, depression, etc. are talked about. Kamala is particularly famous for her confessional writings, and the most significant aspect of the poem or the confessional nature of the poem is the fact that I in the poem is none other than the writer herself, and it is the agonies and it is the conflicts or humiliating or rather offensive experiences that she is going through, defenselessly put out. Kamala is very renowned for her confessional style of writing, that she sheds all her hindrances and composes honestly and authentically and candidly, opening up her private feelings, her personal experiences, and almost in a manner that challenges the limitations and restrictions which the social code of a society forces upon people. And considering that in the early 1965, the kind of social discourse that Kerala or India as a whole had would completely restrain a woman from acknowledging that she had extramarital relationships. So Kamala Das in that sense was very open when she brought together her private and public lives in her writing, and she was very candidly opening or almost like confessing to her reader her private experiences. These are some of the main themes and elements that you have to keep in mind as we explore Kamala Das's poem, My Grandmother's House. I hope you have understood the poem, and I hope you'll read more about Kamala Das and the poem. I'll see you in the next class. Thank you.
If you do have any questions, there is a attendance form that is attached along with today's class announcement. So please fill in the form for your attendance, and also any doubts or queries or any suggestions that you have, you can add it in the feedback within the form. Okay, thank you students. See you for the next class.